17-year-old Jane Maria Coulson was discovered at around 4 o'clock on the morning of April 26, 1871, battered, bleeding, and barely conscious. She was lying in Kidbrooke Lane in Eltham, southeast London. She had been bludgeoned with a hammer, which was located nearby covered in blood. Jane's purse, containing 11 shillings and 4 pennies, had been left untouched, and there was no evidence of sexual assault. This led to the idea that the attack had been either personal or carried out by a random violent stranger. There was no motivation for money or sexual abuse. Due to the nature of the beating, Jane was difficult to identify right away. She fell into a coma for 4 days before dying on April 30th. Before her death, she named Edmund Puck, a young printer from Greenwich, as her attacker. Puck was 24 years old and the son of her employer. Jane was a maid and had been having an affair with Puck for several months. She eventually became pregnant with his child, but he refused to marry her. His brother had already angered their father by taking up with a woman of a lesser social class, and Puck didn't want to do the same thing, as it meant he would have to endure the stress and difficulties of fighting with his well-to-do family. Still, word of the affair emerged, and Jane was fired from her job. In response to Jane's claims, though, the Puck family fired back. They alleged that Jane lost her position because she had been given several warnings and had failed to improve her behavior in response to them. They stated that the 17-year-old had been spoken to about her unkempt appearance and careless work habits, and that she was let go because both issues had persisted. There were allegations that Jane and Puck had continued their relationship even after she lost her job, that they met in secret and sent romantic letters to one another. However, no letters nor any evidence that they existed were ever found. Jane's cousin recalled that she often spoke about running away and eloping with Puck and starting a new life. Reportedly, witnesses saw a man matching Puck's description running from the scene of the crime, and there were assertions that he had been sold the hammer by a local shopkeeper in the days leading up to the assault. Although the shopkeeper couldn't remember the man who had purchased it, Puck, for his part, sometimes claimed that he'd been nowhere near the lane, but at other times said that he was running because he felt a fit coming on and needed to get home. The clothing he described wearing on the night of the crime matched the description of Jane's assailant. Meanwhile, 7 witnesses were said to have seen Puck and Jane in one another's company earlier that evening. The case against Puck at first glance seemed strong, but somehow it all went awry. At the initial coroner's trial, Puck was found guilty of the willful murder of Jane. Following this, arrangements were made for Puck to attend a proper trial at the Old Bailey. The date was set for July 10th. During the trial, the presiding judge ruled that all statements made by Jane prior to her death were hearsay, and therefore could not be included as evidence during the trial. Jane had named Puck as her assailant, and without this important piece of evidence, the prosecution struggled to undoubtedly prove Puck's guilt. Reportedly, several of their arguments came apart when placed under scrutiny by the defense. It took only 20 minutes of deliberation for the jury to acquit Puck, 5 days after the trial started. Despite the fact that Puck walked away as a free man, the people of London were angry and would not drop the matter. Newspapers constantly railed against the 24-year-old and implied his guilt, and when he walked out of court, he found a frustrated mob waiting for him. Many locals believed that he had escaped justice because of his wealth, social class, and family connections. Puck and his family subsequently left London. The press continued to badger them until they eventually changed their name. Jane was interred at Brockley Cemetery alongside her mother on May 8, 1871. Although justice was never found for Jane, her legacy lived on even after her death. Her ghost was reportedly seen numerous times in Kidbrooke Lane, including by patrolling policemen. She appeared wearing a white dress, her face running with blood as she cried for help. Locals began to avoid the area until it was built upon and the ghost vanished.